Well, trying to stop cryptocurrency fraud is like trying to stop a runaway train. It's a massive problem for both consumers and law enforcement. That's what Zach Veshera found out in his countrywide investigation. His special reports with the Investigative Journalism Foundation were just released, and it's great to have Zach here on the program. Zach, through access to information, documents, you discovered something shocking. Tell me what that is.
That's right. Through an access to information request, we discovered that the number of complaints about cryptocurrency fraud to the RCMP has been skyrocketing across Canada. RCMP detachments in 2015 reporting just 18 cryptocurrency related cases. By 2023, up to nearly 4,000. And the overwhelming majority of them, people who have been scammed out of their money.
Wow, and that's just RCMP data. We're not even talking about provincial police. We're not talking about municipal. So, you just assume that the cases are that much higher. And Ritesh, our last guest, mentioned that too. I know you have two feature stories here. Incredible. People need to read them. One of them, you focus in on someone named LW, or who you call LW, a businessman who lost $26 million in crypto scams. That is a crazy amount of money. What happened to LW?
LW's case is unfortunately not very rare, even though the amount of money that he lost is maybe exceptional. LW is a businessman in Nevada, the United States, works in the biomedical field, and a few years ago made contact with someone over the internet who introduced themselves as Jean. They struck up a relationship with LW, which eventually became romantic in nature. This was solely online through the messaging app WhatsApp. Over time, they offered to coach LW in cryptocurrency investment. Before you knew it, LW had started to invest huge amounts of his personal wealth into this, what ended up being a fraudulent investment scheme. And then one day when he tried to withdraw the money, suddenly all of it was gone.
Wow.
Completely vanished into the air. And it's a permutation of a type of scheme that unfortunately is affecting literally thousands of Canadians every year.
So let me ask you, so LW is talking to G. Did he ask for proof? I know it's a romantic relationship, but because they're not in the same place, right?
No, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Jean claimed to actually be someone living here in Vancouver, BC. Obviously, this was a scammer, and it's almost certain that that wasn't true. What's really fascinating about these kinds of cases, though, is that even though it sounds kind of ridiculous, right? This idea that you fall in love with someone over the internet and that you just take their word for it. But these scammers are incredibly adept at convincing people. And Jean provided all these documents that would seem to indicate that she was really a Canadian resident. There was a fake residency card. There was a fake driver's license that was provided. There were photos of, what Jean claimed to look like. There was all this documentation. There was a fake degree that was provided from the university that Jean claimed to have attended. So all this documentation had been doctored and given to LW to really convince him that this was a real person living here in Vancouver.
So why would anyone think that was fake? It's so convincing. And if I look at even the photos that were shared, are those photos of a real person? Was that G?
They are photos of a real individual. LW, after being scammed, eventually did hire a private investigator who did his own little tracing and found that these are photos of a real person. It's not Jean, but they were publicly available on the internet. This private investigator also tracked down the cryptocurrency that had been lost by LW and had found that it had obviously not gone to the place where he believed it was going. So again, these scammers are experts at social engineering. These are scams that take place over the course of months. They use very sophisticated websites that look incredibly legitimate. They doctor documentation to make themselves seem real. They're very complex and very sophisticated schemes.
They're so good at building relationship, which I think is a scary thing, right? You're talking to someone for months. You're not suspect after time. At what point did LW realize I've been scammed?
LW realized he had been scammed at the time that most victims unfortunately realize that they've been scammed is when he would try to withdraw money. Oftentimes the way these scams work is that because they're going for the long haul, they might let you actually withdraw money, quote unquote, from these fraudulent investments a month or two in. They might let you just sort of test it and make sure you can bring the money out because they know that's going to make you trust it more in the long run. And then once you've invested a huge amount of your net worth, be that a few $1,000s, maybe tens of thousands of dollars, or in this case, millions of dollars, and you go to try and get your money, you find that it's locked up. Or worse, oftentimes the scammers will actually say, oh, you can have your money back, but there's this fee. There's this thing that you have to pay us in order to unlock the cash. They will try to bilk you one last time before they let you go.
Wow. Zach, I understand that romance investment schemes are sometimes called pig butchering. It sounds intense and disgusting to me. Can you break down that name for me?
It's a very jarring term, and it refers to this idea that the victim is a pig that is being fattened up essentially by time, by affection, and by the work of the scammer so that it
Mm.
can eventually be butchered for its money, for its parts. And part of the idea of pig butchering too is this notion that you eat every part of the pig. You are literally in these scams trying to capture as much of a victim's net worth as you can, and you're even taking the extra time to learn about their investments, develop a relationship with them, learn how much money they have.
Hmm.
These are, it goes without saying, incredibly devastating scams. They destroy lives, they break people. I've spoken to victims of these scams, and they without variation describe it as one of the hardest things they've ever gone through.
Zach, from your investigation, do you have an idea of who is running these scams? Like, is it people in Canada? Is it people in other countries?
This is one of the great tragedies of these types of scams, is that very rarely do we actually have the offender here in Canada. These are often scams being perpetuated by vast organized criminal organizations, often operating from countries like Myanmar and Cambodia, out of massive compounds in special economic areas
Hmm.
where a lot of the people hired to do these scams, by the way, are themselves trafficked as well.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
you have a horrifying situation where it's trafficked people scamming people here in Canada. That also means that even though police are being inundated by reports of cryptocurrency fraud in Canada and online investment fraud, they are almost never able to actually effect any kind of arrest or recoup assets, because once those assets have left Canada, it's really hard for police to actually pursue that accused person or that suspect.
Mm.
A lot of these governments, frankly, are not going to cooperate with Canadian law enforcement.
So, what does that mean for LW? Like, is there any recourse for $26 million?
LW is trying something quite novel and interesting, and there's only been a few cases of this in British Columbia. LW went to the civil court here, the Supreme Court of BC, and asked for two orders. One is an order asking the cryptocurrency exchanges that handled his money to freeze those assets. The second is called a Norwich order, and it's basically LW asking those cryptocurrency exchange platforms to disclose the names of the account holders where he believes his assets, his cryptocurrency wound up. And actually, last month, the Supreme Court of BC came out and granted both those orders.
Wow.
Now, does that mean LW gets his money back? We don't know at this point. It's not a sure thing that they'll be able to translate this into actually recouping that money. And the accounts where these assets are being held are not necessarily owned by the scammers themselves. They might be owned by middle people. But it does show that there are ways that victims can push back. There are lucky cases I've heard of where victims are able to recoup their money, but it should be said, those are the exceptions. Unfortunately, the most victims of these scams, they lose everything, and it
Right.
is very hard or impossible to get it back.
So it's better to be careful and cautious on the front end. Zach, we'll have to leave it there. Incredible reporting. It's really great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
That was Zach. And for anyone who wants to read Zach's full stories, you can head over to the Investigative Journalism Foundation's website, theijf.org.